In the previous video, I explained how a pelvic floor contraction cue will contract the transversus abdominis and can be used as an entry point into understanding the scoop. The pull up in the middle cue imagines that the sit bones draw together, the coccyx and the pubis draw together, and at this intersection point, we pull up in the middle. That pulling up in the middle will contract the transversus abdominis. And then we added on to that cue to perform the 100, the foundation to the 100, and to understand the scoop. That's great, and that cue serves the purpose of getting you acquainted with how a deep, low transversus abdominal contraction feels. But we really want to stabilize the pelvis and the spine through the trunk muscles, through the stabilizing trunk muscles. The pelvic floor is part of those muscles, but I would prefer to contract the transversus directly instead of indirectly, as we learned in the previous videos. So today, we will repeat that scoop cueing in practice, but we will use a different cue to contract the transversus abdominis. This cue is to bring the entire ilium on one side and the entire ilium on the other. Ilium, or innominate, same thing, same bone. We're going to bring these two together. That will contract the transversus abdominis because the transversus is a horizontal muscle that goes around the entire core canister. But notice how beautiful this transversus abdominis contraction is, because as we draw the innominates together or overlap them or cross them, notice what happens to the pelvic outlet. The pelvic outlet is the bottommost part of the pelvis. As we draw the innominates together, the sit bones widen apart. And it is my experience in Pilates that the area of the inferior posterior pelvis is extremely contracted and tight. And if this area is tight from the external rotation bias that we have in Pilates, where we are generally always externally rotating, standing with feet in V, and even if you were so unfortunate to grow up in the Pilates world with the cues to squeeze your buttocks and wrap the thighs, all those contribute to a tightening, a shortening, a compressing, a restricting of the area between the coccyx and the sacrum and the sit bone, and also between the sit bone and the hip, the head of the femur. And if this area is compressed, the pelvis will never be ideally placed to have muscles be at their optimal length-tension relationship to work properly. And we will never get strong, and we will never have the bodies that we're doing Pilates for.